The topic of Lee Harvey Oswald's transfer to the county jail from Dallas City Hall really started on the morning of Saturday, November 23rd, with Dallas Police Chief Curry being asked about it by the media.
Sir, what we'll be doing with Oswald?
Well, he has been charged that he will be transferred to the county jail and await grand jury action on it.
Chief, when will he be transferred to the county jail?
That I don't know. As soon as we get through talking to him, probably maybe sometime today.
Come that afternoon, Curry was still none the wiser, so he pressed his captain of homicide and robbery, J.W. Fritz, whose division Oswald was in the custody of, to find out if it could have been done as soon as that afternoon. According to Fritz, he told the chief we were still talking to him, and he asked if we could be ready to transfer him by 4 p.m. I told him I didn't think we could finish our questioning by that time, and he asked me if we could be finished by 10 a.m. the next morning. Chief Curry said, "I need to tell these people something definite." Who he was referring to, Fritz stated, "I do not know. I told him I thought we could be ready by that time." Jesse Curry gave a slightly different take. He told the FBI that Fritz was in charge of the plans for removal of Oswald to the Dallas County Jail. And he told the Warren Commission that Fritz didn't think it was a good idea to transfer him at night because of the fact you couldn't see. And if anybody tried to cause them any trouble, they needed to see who they were and where it was coming from and so forth. And he suggested that we wait until daylight, so this was normal procedure. If both statements are to be believed, on November 23rd, Curry's priority was to tell the media when Oswald would be transferred to the county jail, and Fritz's priority was to continue questioning Oswald. Curry's account of Fritz being concerned about transferring Oswald at night is not corroborated in any other statements. So on the face of it, was it just a convenient tidbit that Curry inserted into the narrative after the fact to deflect culpability on his part, given what would ultimately happen to Oswald? Someone who was out of the loop but should have rightly been in it was Sheriff Bill Decker. Per local protocol, it was the sheriff's responsibility to transport prisoners to and from the county jail. Only in extraordinary circumstances was this ever deviated from. In his statement to the FBI, Decker was prompted by some member of the press, whose identity he does not recall, on November 23, 1963. This person advised that Oswald was to be brought to the jail the following day. He called City Hall to find out what was going on and probably spoke to Chief Curry or Captain Will Fritz, but had no independent recollection as to who he talked to and made no record of the calls. Fritz did not mention speaking to Sheriff Decker on November 23rd. Curry was asked by Leon Hubert of the Warren Commission if Decker made any request to deliver his prisoner by saying, "Not at this time." That was the closest either came to corroborating Decker's account. Come the night of November 23rd and early hours of November 24th, threats on Lee Oswald's life would apparently materialize. The first documented threat took place at 2:15 a.m. Sheriff Deputy C.C. McCoy received a call from a person that talked like a white male, and he stated that he was a member of a group of 100 and that he wanted the sheriff's office to know that they had voted 100% to kill Oswald while he was in the process of being transferred to the county jail. And he was conveying information so none of the deputies would get hurt. A short time later, Mr. Newsom from the FBI office called and wanted to know if he had received any calls on the life of Oswald. McCoy told him about the call he had received, so Newsom asked him to call the police department and give them the same information. McCoy did call City Hall and talk to someone in Captain Fritz's office. He did not get his name. The officer made some slight remark and said that they had not received any such calls yet. McCoy soon received another call. It was from a person with a male voice asking if this was the sheriff's department. McCoy said that it was. The man said, "Just a minute," and then another male voice stated that Oswald would never make the trip to the county jail. McCoy could not determine whether or not this was the same voice that had called earlier. It was actually Captain William B. Frazier at the DPD who McCoy spoke with to relay news of the threat to Oswald. We know this because in statements he made on the matter, Frazier referred to a Deputy Cox or Coy calling. If McCoy and Frazier's statements are to be believed, what is the explanation for McCoy receiving the flurry of calls between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and Frazier saying that Cox or Coy called between 5:30 a.m. and 5:45 a.m.? The only thing of note that Frazier mentioned is that FBI agent Newsom contacted him to also advise of the threats. In any event, for the Warren Commission, Frazier said that McCoy told him that Sheriff Decker wanted to talk to Chief Curry about moving Oswald, so he tried to call Curry at his home, but the line was busy. Frazier then tried and spoke to Captain Fritz, who told him that Curry was handling the transfer. Relieving Frazier was Captain Cecil Talbert. On his way out the door at the end of his shift, Frazier told him of the alleged threats and that Chief Curry could not be reached. To this, Talbert said he would send a squad car to Curry's house to have him call the office. Rounding out this tangent, Talbert said that when Curry did get the message, he called to say that he would be in his office between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. Talbert infers that no effort would be made to sneak Oswald out of City Hall so as to maintain proper relations with the press. When Curry did arrive at City Hall on Sunday, November 24th, he did speak with Sheriff Bill Decker. Curry's assistant chief, Charles Batchelor, overheard Curry's end of this conversation by phone and told the Warren Commission that Curry told Decker, "If you want us to, we will." Perhaps the most consistent aspect to the whole threat saga was FBI agent Milton Newsom. After all, it was he that liaised with both the sheriff and Dallas Police Department about them. Conveniently, perhaps as well, is the fact that he took the statements of Sheriff Deputy McCoy, Captain Frazier, and Captain Talbert after Oswald's shooting, and when it comes to the statements that he took of McCoy and Frazier, both are markedly different to the other accounts that they gave. McCoy's 3-page report to Sheriff Decker is comprehensive compared to the single-page summary attributed to him by Newsom. But it was Frazier who had the chance to refute things that Newsom attributed to him in his statement. Frazier told the Warren Commission that Oswald's transfer wasn't any of his business. Therefore, he never told anybody that it would be brought forward in light of threats. Yet Newsom notes Frazier as saying that he did say such a thing. Newsom also had Frazier saying that Oswald's transfer had been publicized primarily as a form of cooperation with the press and news agencies of the press. But again, to the Warren Commission, Frazier pushes back against this by saying he made no such statement. What was Newsom up to by putting words in Frazier's mouth? He led the threat story at the time while it was playing out by passing on word of it in a phone call to the sheriff and police departments, and he had a part in controlling its narrative after the fact, right down to omitting any reference to himself contacting McCoy and Frazier that night in their statements that he took. Could we put this down to the FBI just wanting to have its piece of the action, or was it something more sinister? To summarize, McCoy took a call from a threat maker at 2:15 a.m. Then FBI agent Newsom happened to just call McCoy a few minutes later to ask if he had received any calls on the life of Oswald. After he contacted the DPD at Newsom's urging to notify them of the alleged threat, McCoy received another call also containing a similar threat to Oswald, yet he couldn't be sure if it was the same person who called earlier. Captain Frazier at the DPD received 2 calls a couple of hours later regarding the committee threat, the first from McCoy and the second from Agent Newsom. Despite the time that had lapsed, the threat makers never contacted the DPD directly. At this point, it is reasonable to speculate how legitimate the threats actually were. If they really were from a real source representing a committee of people, there was clearly no follow-through, as no reports ever surfaced of an angry mob that had actually mobilized along the streets of Dallas on Sunday, November 24th. Or were the threats staged? They seem to have started and ended with FBI agent Milt Newsom. He was at the center of the whole saga as it was playing out that night and clearly censored McCoy and Frazier in their statements that he took, while omitting any reference to himself and his own actions that night. If so, the clear question would be, why? The DPD was infested with members of the media that weekend, at times surrounding Oswald, and the FBI, right up to Director J. Edgar Hoover, were aware of it and concerned. Could they have phoned the threats in to provoke the perceptively overrun and inept DPD into transferring Oswald? Or with Lee Oswald's links to the FBI emerging in subsequent years, were they getting on the front foot to minimize any fallout on them for any association with him by highlighting the lack of control and competence the DPD were handling things with that weekend? Who knows? One other story that emerged only after Oswald's shooting was the account of patrol officer Billy Grammer. He would come out and say that he took a call that same night from someone who was warning of a threat against Lee Oswald, and that it wasn't until after Oswald's shooting did he recognize the caller to be Jack Ruby, someone he had coffee with earlier that same night. In the absence of any kind of acknowledgement and reference to Billy Graham in any of the official investigations, as well as any form of corroboration from anyone else, all we have are interviews that Graham gave over the years.
I thought I recognized the voice, but at the same time, I could not put a face or a name with the voice. And as we talked, he began telling me that we needed to change the plans on moving Oswald from the basement, that he knew of the plans to make the move, and if we did not make a change, the statement he made precisely was, "We are going to kill him." No sooner than I turned it on and they were telling that Jack Ruby had killed Oswald, then I suddenly realized, you know, knowing Jack Ruby the way I did, this was the man I was talking to on the phone last night. At that time, I put the voice with the face, and I knew within myself that Jack Ruby is the one that made that call to me the night before. And I think it was obvious because he knew me and I knew him, and he called me by name over the telephone. And seeing this and knowing what I knew and what he had said, then to me it had to be Jack Ruby. He made the statement, "We are going to kill him," which leads me to believe that this was not a spontaneous thing that happened on the spur of the moment. He was watching Oswald coming out the door and all of a sudden he decided to shoot him. I do not believe that. I think this was a planned event with him being the man to do the shooting.
These claims by Billy Graham are highly dubious, and over the years have also included references in the threat to the armored truck that Oswald was to be transported in. I highly doubt the Graham call actually took place because over the years, the times that Graham said he took the call have varied from 9 p.m. Saturday night through until 3 a.m. Sunday morning. There is no corroborating testimony from anyone else that any such call came into City Hall, particularly those who were either there at the time or referenced by Graham, including Captain Frazier, who was in charge that night, Sergeant Putnam, Graham's superior officer, Chief Curry, who Graham said he gave a copy of the notes he wrote during the call and submitted the affidavit to, and Jack Ruby, who never mentioned meeting Graham for coffee or calling him later to warn of a threat on Oswald's life in any statements he gave after the Oswald shooting. To be fair, if it did happen, admitting it would have likely scuppered Ruby's defense the following year that his shooting Oswald was not premeditated. There is no trace of the affidavit Graham wrote up and submitted to Chief Curry. Graham only recognized Jack Ruby as the person who called him after Oswald's shooting, not during the alleged call itself. If he had only just met with Ruby on the Saturday of that weekend, wouldn't his voice have still been fresh in his memory? It is drawing a very long bow to contend that, despite hearing that those plotting to kill Oswald knew of an armored car to be used as a decoy in the transfer, the DPD would still ultimately decide to use an armored car as a decoy in the actual transfer. During their investigation, the FBI asked all DPD personnel about any associations that police personnel had with Jack Ruby. If the call was real and known to them, the FBI would have interviewed Graham to probe his connection with Ruby. But they, the DPD, and the Warren Commission did not ever reference or interview Graham. In the absence of any supporting evidence, the instance of Graham saying he took a call from Jack Ruby warning of an attack on Oswald appears to be yet another case in the JFK assassination universe of a tenuous tale being spun for which only one person's word can be relied upon. One thing that is clear is that the threats, legitimate or not, that were allegedly phoned into only the FBI and sheriff departments that night showed how, firstly, underprepared the DPD were and how unresponsive and aware Chief Jesse Curry was in responding to them by ensuring Oswald's transfer was brought forward for his safety. Was it really all just down to Curry wanting to keep his promise to the media? Or was it something more sinister than that?